Hi guys, welcome to the third tutorial of PHP. Today we're going to talk about PHP variables. We call it PHP call it variable because they vary. That means their value actually change. So in order to define variable in PHP, you use $sign. So whenever you type in dollar, PHP will know that you're going to type you have a variable in there. So let's say you want to create a variable called name, and then if you assign the value using the equal sign, and then if it's a string variable, then it's like you type in like that, and then you just type in the value, and then this is how you define the variable. So you $sign, and then the name of the variable, then a space, and then equal to, and then a space, and then the value, and then the semicolon. Whichever variable it is, you always define in the same pattern. In term of naming convention of the variable, you can use the alphanumeric characters and underscore. What does that mean? You can use A to Z and capital A to Z, 0 to 9, and underscore. So you can use all these characters. So for example, I can have a variable called name1. I can have a variable called name underscore 1, or like name1, or I can have a name person name. I remember in the previous tutorial I talked about the variables in PHP are case sensitive. So which means now you have a person, now this n is capital. Now if I have another variable called person name equal to something John, so this is a different name. This is a different variable. So if I now I will do that later. I will show you guys how to print these variables to the screen in few minutes. So just want to clarify this first. So this, because of this n capital and n lowercase, they are two different variables for PHP. But for functions, as I talked earlier, the functions or class or anything else in PHP is case insensitive. That means the name of those things will be same even if you change the case from lowercase to uppercase or uppercase to lowercase. They will be same for those one, but for not for variables. Just remember this one, because you can have some issues in future if you don't follow this pattern. The best practice I recommend, you always use the same case for the code. So if you have this lowercase, then whenever you're trying to use this variable, always use the same case. No, don't change the case. That will help you actually not cause any issue in your code. In terms of printing, so let me get rid of one of the variables. So now you have this person. Let's make it shorter. So let's say you have a name called John Doe, and then now if you want to print the variable to the screen, you use the echo command. So you type in echo, and then you have a space after that, and then you can use the variable, and then the semicolon. Every statement in PHP always end with the semicolon, so never forget that. So whenever you have it, this is a command, space, variable, semicolon. So now if I refresh my screen, you can see that it's printing the name to the screen. If you want to print out other text as part of the name, you can choose double quote and then person name is and then double quote close. So yeah, so this is how echo command works. When you type in double quote, and so everything is enclosed in this thing, this is a string is closed within the double quote. This will be executed, and PHP will recognize once you have a dollar sign, it will know that it's a variable. So PHP will replace this variable with the value for that variable. So that's why on the screen on the right hand side you see this is all the same, but the variable actually changed instead. So you don't see dollar name there, you see John Doe, because the PHP will know that I need to replace the variable with the value. So this all just happened in the backend. One thing you will notice that in PHP, if you use double quote, it will replace the value, but if you use single quote, and then it's not going to replace the value of that variable, because for PHP engine, single quote means you just typing the string like a text just as it is, and then see it didn't replace the dollar name in that case. So remember, if you using variable, you want to replace the variable with the value, always use double quote in that case. Okay, so other thing in variables is the scope. Variables have in PHP 3 different scope. One is local, second is global, and third is static. So local variables are like, you have a variable called here, and then you call it, assign a value John Doe to that variable. Now whenever you print that variable is available within this whole file, and this is called a local scope as within the file. This is local, and let's say if I have a function, I just want to show you this local scope versus global scope. You don't need to learn the function yet, but just to give you example about the scope. So now if I do echo dollar name here, and I take out that and I just call this function here, and basically I just defined a function and calling it. Don't worry about this at all, but just for the scope understanding, this will help you a little bit. So you can see on the screen I don't have anything, even though I'm calling this function and trying to echo this variable. Even though the variable has a value, this function is not printing anything. The reason is that the variable is defined outside the function, so this function doesn't have access to this local variable. So in order to access that variable, I have to say I need to use global command in PHP. So now I'm telling that this dollar, the name variable, is actually a global variable. That means PHP will know that once it has in that name variable defined here, once it go in that function, it say, oh, global variable, oh, I have defined that's defined already somewhere, so it will bring that variable value, and then when you echo that one, it will print out the value. Let's refresh the screen. So now you can see on the screen that it's printing actually the value. So whenever you need a variable that's actually created outside the function, you have to use the global command. Just remember that. That's the only thing you need to remember. In terms of static, that's the third scope type in PHP. So the way you do is let's use another example, because this will clarify more. Let's say static $x. I have a function called add, and add $y, and then I've created this static x variable, and then I say if empty $x, sorry, just make it simple so you guys don't confuse this with this thing. And let's say static $x return $x plus $y. I'm just joining, adding the value y to the x. So now if I say add, let's say add 2, now add again 2, and because this is returning, I want to echo the value that is returning. So, and then also I add a break line so that you have seen this is a new thing for you. So this is called a string concatenation. So you use a dot sign to join one string to the other string. So let's say you have this hello, there's one string, and then you want to join this with another string. You do that. That's how you join string together in PHP. So in JavaScript you use you use plus sign, but in PHP it's that sign is dot sign. So okay, just and I'm just this is the just HTML part. So I'm just using single quote because there's no variable. So I recommend you whenever you have just HTML, use the single quotes, because it will be faster for the PHP engine, because it doesn't need to validate that there's a variable inside that string or not. So that's why it will be faster for processing. Now let's see, now we're calling this add function, passing 2 in here. So what will happen, it was 0 initially, 0 plus 2 will become 2, and then this will print 2. Now adding 2 again. Now what would normally, if you don't have that static, let's take rid of the static in the first place, and then you will have 0 again, 0 plus 2 will print 2 again. So now if I refresh this screen, you will see 2 and 2. So that means the value always remain the same. But if I say static, what will happen, this will be 2 but this will be 4. Something wrong. Okay, because the reason it's not working because I'm not updating the value of x. Okay, now it will make more sense. Let's get rid of static first to run without static. Okay, now you see it's still the same, but now if I have static there, this will make the difference. Yeah, what I want to show you guys is, like, once you have the static in PHP, and PHP is not going to assign any value after at the static statement. So when you pass 2, the 2 comes in here, it will say, okay, I have a static variable $x, and this was not created first, so it initialized with the 0 sign, and then x plus 2 become 4, and then we're returning 4 here. So sorry, it was 0 first, 0 plus 2 become 2 first, so it become 2. Now you pass in 2 again. Now 2 comes here. Now x equal to 0 doesn't execute because this was static. It doesn't this line doesn't run. Now this was 2 before. That's what static is. It will bring the value that was there before. So 2 plus the value you pass in 2 becomes 4. That's why you see on the screen you say 4. So static variables are most likely used when you want to preserve the previous value of the variable. That's when you use static. It's not used that often. So yeah, just be clear that don't use this variable, this type scope type that often. Only use when you need something like a static information about something. Let's say you start your website, and then you have a, let's say, application mode called is on in development. You have that status. So now you want to carry that status across the whole application. So you have a variable called status, and then you have a value in that static. That's a static variable, and then you have a value called in progress, and then you carry that variable across the whole application. That's when you use static. But normally when you do, in general terms, you don't use static that much. So alright, I hope I cover most of the aspects of variable, and thanks for watching this video. I will see you in the next tutorial.